South Carolina's tourism board would pay actual money to make sure you never see this video because today, I'm ranking the 12 creepiest towns in the Palmetto State, not the haunted house in October lists. The towns where locals will genuinely tell you not to drive certain roads after midnight, where a 7-foot reptilian creature attacked a teenager's car and the sheriff took it seriously enough to make plaster casts of the footprints, where a man built a UFO landing pad for aliens in his backyard and it became a legitimate tourist attraction, and where the Gray Man has been appearing on the beach before hurricanes for over a century and nobody has a better explanation. If this video gets 50,000 likes, I'll do a part 2. South Carolina absolutely has the material. Let's count it down. Number 12, Pawleys Island. When I first visited Pawleys Island, I drove out onto the narrow strip of land that separates the ocean from the saltwater creek, and I understood immediately why people have been coming here for 200 years. It's one of the oldest resort communities on the East Coast. Rice planters from the Low Country were escaping here to catch the sea breeze before the Revolutionary War. The year-round population is under 200 people. The seasonal population swells dramatically. Pawleys Island is in Georgetown County on the Grand Strand, about 25 miles south of Myrtle Beach, and the median home price here has climbed well past $400,000 for most properties. But here's what makes Pawleys Island genuinely creepy in a way that goes beyond carnival haunted house stuff. The Gray Man has been reported appearing on Pawleys Island's beach before major hurricanes for well over a century. The legend says he's the ghost of a young man who died in a riding accident on his way to reunite with his fiancée. His body was found in the marsh. Residents who encounter the Gray Man, a cloaked, translucent figure on the beach, invariably report that their homes are spared when the hurricane strikes, even as neighboring structures are destroyed. There have been documented reports before multiple major storms: Hugo in 1989, Hazel in 1954. Nobody has explained it. The ones who report seeing him all say the same thing. You don't feel afraid, you feel warned. The honest caveat, Pawleys Island absolutely does get hit by hurricanes, and homeowners insurance here reflects that coastal reality significantly. But the Gray Man has been keeping local legend alive longer than any insurance adjuster. What the Gray Man legend actually does, practically speaking, is give Pawleys Island homeowners a reason to tell the story every time anyone asks about the hurricane risk, which is both charming and a useful social function. The median home price on Pawleys Island now sits above $400,000 for most properties. The surrounding Georgetown County mainland offers access to the Pawleys Island beach lifestyle at meaningfully lower entry prices for buyers willing to take a short drive to the sand. Number 11, Ware Shoals. Ware Shoals sits along the Saluda River in Greenwood County in the South Carolina upstate, about 25 miles from Greenwood and 70 miles from Greenville. Population around 2,100. It's a former textile mill town. Like so many upstate communities, it was built entirely around the mill, and when the mill closed, the economic oxygen went with it. Ware Shoals sits right at the bottom of Lake Greenwood's inflow, and the surrounding landscape is genuinely gorgeous. River gorges, old-growth trees along the water, the kind of terrain that made upstate South Carolina one of the most compelling regions in the Southeast before the interstate highway network bypassed it. But Ware Shoals has a dark thread running through it. The town and the surrounding river gorges have a long history of mysterious accidents, drownings, and disappearances in the water, and the Saluda River here has claimed more lives than the town's historical population would suggest is statistically normal. Old locals talk about it matter-of-factly, the way people talk about dangerous currents they've always known about. There's also a persistent rumor, which has never been officially confirmed or denied, about the old mill itself and what was allegedly found in the basement during a demolition phase. Nobody I spoke to would go into specifics, but multiple people mentioned it unprompted. The Saluda River gorges here are genuinely extraordinary, the kind of landscape that would anchor a state park in a more developed region. Paddling the Saluda below the Ware Shoals Dam is an experience that locals describe as one of the best-kept secrets in the upstate. Greenwood County's median home price runs around $150,000, but Ware Shoals itself offers housing considerably below that, often under $120,000 for a solid older home. The nearest hospital is in Greenwood, about 20 minutes away. For a remote worker willing to trade amenities for extraordinary natural access at very low prices, Ware Shoals is a place that deserves investigation, just with a clear understanding of the town's history with the river and what that history represents. Number 10. Walterboro. You heard about Walterboro earlier on the most dangerous towns list, but it earns a spot on this list for a completely different reason. Walterboro's historic water tower, a 133-foot-tall cylindrical standpipe that still dominates the downtown skyline, contains something most people don't know about. Built in the late 1800s, the tower was later modified to include a series of small cells inside the upper structure. Those cells were used as a jail. Prisoners were held hundreds of feet in the air inside a water tower, accessible only by ladder, in a small South Carolina town in the early 20th century. The tower is still standing. You can still see it from the highway. The Tuskegee Airmen trained at a World War II base near Walterboro, and the town has a memorial to that history, which is genuinely worth visiting. But then there's the tower, and then there's the county's history, and then there's the Murdaugh trial. And Walterboro starts feeling less like a front porch and more like a place with secrets stacked inside other secrets. The antebellum homes are beautiful, the azaleas are spectacular in spring. Some historians who've written about the tower say prisoners were held there well into the 20th century, making Walterboro's water tower one of the only examples of aerial incarceration in American civic history. Add the Tuskegee Airmen history, the 477th Bombardment Group trained at Walterboro Army Airfield, and the Colleton County Air Base Historic District preserves that memory, and Walterboro becomes a town where history arrives in unexpected places and doesn't always arrive gently. Home prices can run under $175,000 for a solid older home, sometimes significantly under. Colleton Medical Center provides healthcare access, which is a genuine quality of life asset for a city of this size. Number 9. Abbeville. Abbeville is a genuinely beautiful town in Abbeville County in the western upstate, about 40 miles from Greenville and 35 miles from Anderson. Population around 4,900. The courthouse square is one of the most architecturally stunning in South Carolina. The Opera House, the 1908 courthouse, the antebellum storefronts around the square give Abbeville the feeling of a town that was simply set in amber at some point in the early 20th century. The main street looks like a movie set, a very Southern Gothic movie set. Abbeville's place in American history is genuinely unnerving when you sit with it. This is the town where the Confederacy was born. John C. Calhoun, who provided the political philosophy that made secession conceivable, lived and practiced law here, and it's the town where the Confederacy symbolically ended. Jefferson Davis held his last full cabinet meeting here in May 1865 in a house on the main square that still stands. The Confederacy began in Abbeville and ended in Abbeville. There's a particular kind of historical weight to that. Abbeville's crime statistics have improved significantly in recent years. It actually appeared on South Carolina's list of cities with the lowest violent crime rates in 2023. But the atmosphere of the town, the cemetery that seems to take up half the downtown's geography, the abandoned Victorian homes on the outskirts, and the history that saturates every brick make Abbeville one of the more genuinely atmospheric places in the state. Median home prices here can run under $150,000, and individual properties are available for significantly less for the patient buyer who wants to restore something genuinely old. Abbeville crime data. It appeared in SLED's 5 lowest violent crime list for 2023. The nearest full hospital is in Greenwood, about 20 miles away. The combination of low prices, low crime, and real theater in a 1908 opera house is rare enough that it deserves to be said plainly. Abbeville might be the most underrated small city in the South Carolina upstate. Number 8. Hampton. Hampton is the county seat of Hampton County in the lower coastal plain. Population around 2,800, sitting about 30 miles north of Savannah. It is a quiet, small, Spanish moss-draped town that most of the country had never heard of until 2021. What happened in Hampton County beginning that year turned it into the subject of one of the most widely followed true crime stories in American history. Alex Murdaugh, the scion of a family that had served as the local solicitor for 3 consecutive generations and effectively ran the legal and political apparatus of Hampton County, was arrested in connection with the murders of his wife Maggie and son Paul. The investigation that followed revealed not just those two murders, but decades of alleged financial fraud, a conspiracy to orchestrate a fake murder for insurance scheme, the suspicious death of a boat passenger tied to his son, and a web of alleged corruption involving law enforcement, the legal community, and local politics that shocked even seasoned investigators. The Hampton County Courthouse, where the Murdaugh family had operated for 3 generations, sits quietly on Main Street. The roads where the murders occurred are unmarked. The marsh where Paul Murdaugh died in the boat crash is still there. Hampton County's median home prices run very low, under $120,000 for most properties, sometimes considerably under, which reflects both the economic circumstances and the current stigma from the national media coverage. That coverage also drove a wave of true crime tourism to Hampton County that locals have had mixed feelings about. Some businesses benefited, others felt their community was being reduced to a crime story that started long before 2021. Hampton has significant antebellum architecture on its main street. The town is named for Wade Hampton, the Confederate cavalry general and later Reconstruction-era governor. Now it's known for something else entirely. If you're drawn to genuine Southern Gothic atmosphere and one of the most consequential true crime cases of the decade, Hampton County delivers both. Healthcare access requires a meaningful drive to the nearest full-service facility. Number 7, Bishopville. Bishopville is a small agricultural city of about 3,300 people in Lee County in the central part of South Carolina, roughly 50 miles from Columbia. It's the kind of town that most people pass through on their way somewhere else. Quiet streets, cotton fields on the outskirts, a downtown that's seen better decades. And then, in the summer of 1988, Bishopville became briefly famous in one of the stranger ways a South Carolina town has ever become famous. On the night of June 29, 1988, a 17-year-old named Christopher Davis blew a tire on Browntown Road at the edge of Hellhole Swamp. As he finished changing the tire, something emerged from the swamp. 7 feet tall, green, scaly skin, glowing red eyes, 3 fingers, and 3 toes. It jumped on his car as he tried to drive away. He made it home. He went to the Lee County Sheriff's Office. The sheriff, a measured man named Liston Truesdale, took the report seriously. Within weeks, another family's car had been found with deep gouges and apparent tooth marks. More sightings came in. CBS News covered the story. A radio station offered a $1 million reward for the lizard man's capture. The sheriff went to the swamp personally and made plaster casts of the 3-toed footprints he found there. He was going to send them to the FBI before a colleague talked him out of it. The lizard man of Hellhole Swamp has never been caught, explained, or debunked to anyone's complete satisfaction. The Cotton Museum downtown still displays the original plaster footprint casts in a glass case near the entrance. The Friends of the Lizard Man have organized Lizard Man Stomp events in recent years. Bishopville owns its mythology. Median home prices in Lee County are very low. Just don't blow a tire near the swamp after dark. If you're learning stuff about South Carolina that you never expected, hit that subscribe button. I cover the best and worst places to live in America every single week. And trust me, this list is only getting wilder from here. Number 6, Edgefield. Edgefield is a small upstate town of about 4,700 people in Edgefield County, about 25 miles from Aiken and 40 miles from Augusta, Georgia. It is one of the most historically significant small towns in South Carolina and possibly one of the most violent historied places of its geographic size in the American South. Edgefield County produced 10 governors and 5 lieutenant governors of South Carolina. The county's political tradition is so dominant in state history that historians have written entire books about it. But the tradition wasn't gentle. Edgefield was the home base of red shirt paramilitary violence during Reconstruction, the brutal campaign of organized racial terror that ended Reconstruction government in South Carolina. Ben Tillman, who led that campaign, was later a U.S. Senator from here, and his statue stood in front of the State House for over a century. Edgefield has a history of extreme political violence that runs like a river underneath its beautiful antebellum surface. The Old Town Square is stunning, the old Edgefield Grill is famous, the Pottersville Museum celebrates Edgefield's significant pottery tradition, But the Edgefield County Courthouse stands on ground soaked in a particularly dark chapter of American history, and the atmosphere of the town carries that weight in ways that are hard to articulate and harder to dismiss. Current crime rates in Edgefield are actually among the lowest in the state. The history is the creepy part. The pottery is the extraordinary part. Edgefield's alkaline glazed stoneware tradition produced Dave the Potter, an enslaved man who signed his enormous storage jars with poems in an era when teaching an enslaved person to read was illegal in South Carolina. Dave's signed jars now sell for six-figure sums at major auction houses and are held by the Metropolitan Museum of Art. The Pottersville Museum here documents that tradition. Median home prices in Edgefield run well under $150,000 for solid older homes, and the county has the lowest violent crime rate in South Carolina according to 2023 SLED data. Number 5. Somerton. Somerton is a tiny town in Clarendon County, population around 1,000 people, sitting about 50 miles east of Columbia near the shores of Lake Marion. It looks exactly like what it is, a small rural lake town with a modest downtown, modest home prices, and modest traffic. But Somerton sits at the center of one of the most consequential legal fights in American history. The Somerton school segregation case, Briggs versus Elliott, was one of the 5 cases that the Supreme Court consolidated into Brown versus Board of Education. Black parents in Somerton filed one of the earliest direct legal challenges to school segregation in the United States, and they did it when doing so was genuinely dangerous. Several of the black plaintiffs lost their jobs, their credit, their businesses. The white power structure of Clarendon County responded to the legal challenge with systematic economic retaliation. The school that black children attended while the case worked its way to the Supreme Court still stands in Somerton. The town that contains this history looks entirely ordinary, which is perhaps the most unnerving thing about it. The place where one of the most significant legal battles in American history was fought looks like any other small South Carolina town. Lake Marion, formed when the Santee Cooper hydroelectric project flooded the Congaree Basin in the 1940s and displaced hundreds of residents from land their families had farmed for generations, provides fishing and boating access to Somerton today, an outcome those displaced families did not receive. Clarendon County home prices run very low, often under $120,000 for a livable property. Healthcare requires a drive to Sumter or Orangeburg. The entire town of Somerton looks completely ordinary from the road. That disconnect between appearance and historical weight is what makes it the 5th creepiest place in South Carolina. Number 4, Bowman. Bowman is an extremely small community in Orangeburg County, population around 1,000, sitting about 60 miles south of the capital, Columbia, on State Highway 301. It is not a particularly notable place by any conventional measure. But for 2 decades, Bowman was home to one of the most genuinely peculiar roadside attractions in the continental United States, the UFO Welcome Center. In 1994, a Bowman resident named Jody Pendarvis decided that when the extraterrestrials finally came to South Carolina, and he was certain they would, they should have somewhere comfortable to land and decompress after the journey. So he built a 46-foot wide flying saucer-shaped structure in his backyard out of wood, fiberglass, and salvaged plastic, mounted on 4 columns with a ramp that lowered by electric motor. He furnished it with a bed, a satellite TV, a shower, a toilet, and air conditioning. He lived there on and off for years. The UFO Welcome Center was featured in national travel guides, visited by Roseanne Barr and Comedy Central, and attracted curiosity seekers from across the country for over 2 decades. It burned to the ground in May of 2024. The owner said he had no idea what started the fire, then paused and said maybe it was the aliens. The lot still sits there on Homestead Road. Pendarvis has mentioned rebuilding. Whether the aliens will return for the grand reopening remains to be seen. The UFO Welcome Center had been featured in major travel publications, visited by Roseanne Barr, covered by Comedy Central, and referenced in multiple national quirky roadside attraction guides across its 3 decades of operation. The fire left a pile of ash and a question. Pendarvis told reporters he might rebuild. Orangeburg County home prices run in the $120,000 to $150,000 range. Bowman itself has under 1,000 residents. The lot on Homestead Road, about 60 miles south of Columbia on State Highway 301, is still there, which means the possibility of a rebuilt UFO welcome center is technically still on the table. Number 3, 96. Let me tell you about a town with a number for a name and about 2,000 people inside it, and a mystery at its center that nobody has ever fully resolved. 96 is a small community in Greenwood County, about 12 miles south of Greenwood proper, and the origin of its name has been debated for over 250 years. The most popular theory says it's the approximate number of miles from the town to the Cherokee settlement of Keowee, except subsequent surveys revealed the actual distance to be significantly different. Another theory involves a surveyor's notation about 9 creeks and 6 other streams running in specific directions. A third involves the Welsh phrase Nant Seek, meaning dry gulch. Nobody knows for certain. What's not in dispute is that 96 was a significant colonial trading post, that a major Revolutionary War battle was fought there. 550 American loyalists held off over 1,000 Continental troops in a 28-day siege, and that the 96 National Historic Site preserves the remnants of that star fort today. The town is also home to a pecan company, a former Southern Railway depot now serving as a museum, and an aviation outfitter called Warbird Adventures that offers rides in actual vintage World War II aircraft. Median home prices in the 96 area are very low, often well under $150,000, and the town has a quiet, time capsule quality that a certain kind of person finds deeply appealing. The Warbird Adventures operation at 96 is worth noting specifically. Actual World War II era aircraft, T-6 Texan trainers, open cockpit biplanes, available for flight experiences to paying customers in a town of 2,000 people in Greenwood County, South Carolina. That's a thing that exists here and nowhere near here simultaneously. Median home prices in the 96 area run well under $150,000, often significantly under, with Greenwood County offering solid value for anyone who wants upstate South Carolina at genuinely rural prices. Also, the name of the town will confuse your GPS every single time. There is no getting around this. Number 2, Gaffney. Gaffney sits in Cherokee County in the northern upstate, about 35 miles north of Spartanburg and 20 miles south of the North Carolina border, with a population around 12,500. It's a genuine small city with a working downtown, hospital access, Cherokee Medical Center is here, and the kind of Blue Ridge mountain-adjacent scenery that makes the upstate beautiful. And Gaffney produced the most famous water tower in the history of House of Cards. The Peachoid, a 1,000,000-gallon water storage tank painted to look exactly like a giant peach, complete with the leaf stem and the characteristic crease, stands 150 feet tall on the Interstate 85 corridor and has been a South Carolina landmark since 1981, painted by a California artist who apparently spent weeks studying local peaches before putting brush to steel. Netflix's House of Cards used the Peachoid in a memorable scene, and ever since, tourists have been pulling over on Interstate 85 to photograph it. The creepy part, and it's fairly specific, is that the crease on the peach is oriented in a way that certain truckers discovered looks, from certain angles at certain times of day, considerably less like a piece of fruit than the designers may have intended. This was discussed in the House of Cards scene. Local residents have strong opinions about the whole situation. The Peachoid is currently Georgia peach colored, very large, and unavoidable. Cherokee County offers some of the best cost of living value in upstate South Carolina, with median home prices that can run well under $175,000. If you've made it this far, do me a favor and hit that like button. It genuinely helps this video reach more people who are trying to figure out what South Carolina is actually like beyond the beach brochures. Number 1, Hellhole Swamp, Berkeley County. There is a place in South Carolina called Hellhole Swamp, and I am not making this up. It's in Berkeley County, about 45 miles northwest of Charleston, in the Francis Marion National Forest. The name has been on the map since at least the 18th century. Nobody who gave it that name was being ironic. The swamp encompasses thousands of acres of blackwater Carolina bays, ancient, isolated lake depressions of unknown origin that dot the coastal plain landscape from New Jersey to Georgia, but concentrate in South Carolina. The water in Carolina bays is the color of dark tea stained by tannins from cypress and bay trees, and the bays are dense with cypress knees, pitcher plants, and species of carnivorous plants found almost nowhere else in the world. The Hellhole Bay Wilderness within the Francis Marion National Forest is a federally protected wilderness area, which means no roads, no development, and almost no people in a landscape that hasn't fundamentally changed in thousands of years. Panthers were last documented in Hellhole Swamp in the early 20th century. Whether anything significant still moves through it at night is a question the data doesn't answer. Here's the thing about Hellhole Swamp that doesn't make it onto the Forest Service website. In 2015, a game camera set up by a hunter in Berkeley County, about 15 miles from the wilderness boundary, captured something on video that generated enough attention to be analyzed by the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization. They found the claim credible. The Berkeley County extension of the Francis Marion National Forest remains genuinely one of the most isolated, ecologically strange, and atmospherically heavy landscapes in the eastern United States. You can drive right up to the wilderness boundary on State Road 45. Getting further in requires you to want to. One more thing, if this video made you curious about South Carolina beyond the spooky stuff, I put together the SC Retirement Relocation Kit, a 40-page decision workbook with the real tax numbers, insurance costs, and a town comparison tool built specifically for people thinking about a move here. Link is in the description. The 12 towns and places on this list are real. Their histories are real. Their legends, in most cases, have never been satisfactorily disproven. South Carolina is a state that presents a very polished face to the world: the golf resorts, the beach towns, the antebellum architecture, the sweet tea. The other face is this: a landscape where the Spanish moss hangs thick enough to block out the afternoon light, where the swamps go on for miles, and where the distance between what you can explain and what you can't is shorter than you'd like. If this video gave you a new angle on South Carolina, subscribe to the channel. I do videos like this every week covering the real America behind the tourist brochure. Drop a comment telling me which one actually gave you chills. I'll see you in the next one.